Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachariya Yamuna Tira Vanachariya जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजना यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजना यमुना तीरा वनचारि यमुना तीरा वनचारि जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय श्रीमद भागवतम की जय all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga all glories to his divine grace Srila Prabhupada Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhakti Vikas ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, titled The Process of Creation, Text 20. Shriyaha Patir Yajna Patihi Praja Patir Dhyam Patir Loka Patir Dhara Patihi Patir Gatish Chandaka Vrishni Satvatam प्रसीदताम में भगवान सताम पतिः श्रियः पतिर श्रियः पतिर्यज्ञपतिः प्रजापतिर् श्रियः पतिर्यज्ञपतिः प्रजापतिर् धियां पतिर्लोकपतिर्धरापतिः धियां पतिर्लोकपतिर्धरापतिः पतिर्गतिश्छान्दकवृष्णिसात्वताम् पतिर्गतिश्छान्दकवृष्णिसात्वताम् प्रसीदतां मे भगवान् सतां पतिः प्रसीदतां मे भगवान् सतां पतिः श्रियः पतिर्यज्ञपतिः प्रजापतिर् धियां पतिर्लोकपतिर्धरापतिः पतिर्गतिश्चान्धकवृष्णिसात्वताम् प्रसीदता मे भगवान् सतां पतिः श्रियः पतिर्यज्ञपतिः प्रजापतिर् धियां पतिर्लोकपतिर्धरापतिः पतिर्गतिश्चान्दकवृष्णिसात्वताम् प्रसीदता मे भगवान् सतां पतिः श्रियः पतिर्यज्ञपतिः प्रजापतिर् धियां पतिर्लोकपतिर्धरापतिः पतिर्गतिश्चान्धकवृष्णिसात्वताम् प्रसीदता मे भगवान् सतां पतिः Please repeat. So beautiful. श्रियः पतिर्यज्ञपतिः प्रजापतिर् धियां पतिर्लोकपतिर्धरापतिः पतिर्गतिश्चान्दकवृष्णिसात्वताम् सीदता मे भगवान् सतां पतिः यः पतिर्यज्ञपतिः प्रजापतिर् धियां पतिर्लोकपतिर्धरापतिः पतिर्गतिश्चान्धकवृष्णिसात्वताम् प्रसीदता मे भगवान् सतां पतिः श्रियः पतिर्यज्ञपतिः प्रजापतिर् धियां पतिर्लोकपतिर्धरापतिः पतिर्गतिश्चान्दकवृष्णिसात्वताम् प्रसीदता मे भगवान् सतां पतिः श्रियः पतिर्यज्ञपतिः प्रजापतिर् धियां पतिर्लोकपतिर्धरापतिः पतिर्गतिश्चान्दकवृष्णिसात्वताम् पतिर्गतिश्चान्दकवृष्णिसात्वताम् प्रसीदता मे भगवान् सतां पतिः श्रियः पतिर्यज्ञपतिः प्रजापतिर् धियां पतिर्लोकपतिर्धरापतिः पतिर्गतिश्चान्दकवृष्णिसात्वताम् प्रसीदता मे भगवान् सतां पतिः श्रियः पतिर्यज्ञपतिः प्रजापतिर् धियां पतिर्लोकपतिर्धरापतिः पतिर्गतिश्चान्दकवृष्णिसात्वताम् प्रसीदता मे भगवान् सतां पतिः Word to word meanings. Shriyaha, all opulence. Patihi, the owner. Yajna, of sacrifice. Patihi, the director. Prajapatihi, the leader of all living entities. Dhyam, of intelligence. Patihi, the master. Lokapatihi, the proprietor of all planets. Dhara, earth. Patihi, the supreme. Patihi, head. Gatihi, destination. Cha, also Andhaka, one of the kings of the Yadu dynasty. Vrishni, the first king of the Yadu dynasty. Satvatam, the Yadus. Prasidatam, Be merciful. May upon me. Bhagavan, Lord Shri Krishna, Satam, of all devotees, Patihi, the Lord. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. May Lord Shri Krishna, who is the worshipable Lord of all devotees, the protector and glory of all the kings like Andhaka and Vrishni of the Yadu dynasty, the husband of all goddesses of fortune, the director of all sacrifices, and therefore the leader of all living entities, the controller of all intelligence, and the proprietor of all planets, spiritual and material, and the supreme incarnation on the earth, the supreme in all, be merciful unto me. Be merciful upon me. Purport. Since Sukadev Goswami is one of the prominent Gatavyalikas, those who are freed from all misconceptions, he therefore expresses his own realized perception of Lord Sri Krishna being the sum total of all perfection, the personality of Godhead. Everyone is seeking the favor of the goddess of fortune, but people do not know that Lord Sri Krishna is the beloved husband of all goddesses of fortune. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said that the Lord, in his transcendental abode, Golok of Vrindavan, is accustomed to herding the Surabhi cows and is served there by hundreds of thousands of goddesses of fortune. All these goddesses of fortune are manifestations of his transcendental pleasure potency, Hladini Shakti, in his internal energy. When the Lord manifested himself on this earth, he partially displayed the activities of his pleasure potency in his Rasa Leela just to attract the conditioned souls who are after the phantasmagoria pleasure potency in the degraded sex enjoyment. The pure devotees of the Lord, like Shukadeva Goswami, who was completely detached from abominable sex life of the material world, discuss this act of the Lord's pleasure potency, certainly not in relation to sex, but to relish a transcendental taste inconceivable to the mundaners who are after sex life. Sex life in the mundane world is the root cause of being conditioned by the shackles of illusion, and certainly Shukadeva Goswami was never interested in the sex life of the mundane world. Nor does the manifestation of the Lord's pleasure potency have any connection with such degraded things. Lord Chaitanya was a strict sannyasi, so much so that he did not allow any woman to come near him, not even to bow down and offer respects. He never heard the prayers of the Devadasis offered in the temple of Jagannath because a sannyasi is forbidden to hear songs sung by the fair sex. Yet, even in the rigid position of a sannyasi, he recommended the mode of worship preferred by the gopis of Vrindavan as the topmost loving service possible to be rendered to the Lord. And Srimati Radharani is the principal head of all such goddesses of fortune, and therefore she is the pleasure counterpart of the Lord and is non-different from Krishna. In the Vedic rituals, there are recommendations for performing different types of sacrifices in order to achieve the greatest benefit in life. The benedictions that result from performing great sacrifices are, after all, favors given by the goddesses of fortune. And the Lord, being the husband or lover of the goddess of fortune, is factually the Lord of all sacrifices also. He is the final enjoyer of all kinds of yajna. Therefore, Yagyapati is another name of Lord Vishnu. It is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita that everything be done for Yagyapati, Yajnatat Karmanaha, because otherwise one's acts will be the cause of conditioning by the laws of material nature. Those who are not freed from all misconceptions, Vyalikam, perform sacrifices to please the minor demigods. But the devotees of the Lord know very well that Lord Sri Krishna is the supreme enjoyer of all performances of sacrifice. Therefore, they perform the Sankirtan Yajna, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnoho, which is especially recommended in this age of Kali. In Kali Yuga, performance of other types of sacrifice is not feasible due to insufficient arrangements and inexpert priesthood. We have information from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, text 10 and 11, that Lord Brahma, after giving rebirth to the conditioned souls within the universe, instructed them to perform sacrifices and to lead a prosperous life. With such sacrificial performances, the conditioned souls will never be in difficulty in keeping the body and soul together. Ultimately, they can purify their existence. They will find natural promotion into spiritual existence, the real identity of the living being. Under no circumstances should a conditioned soul give up the practice of sacrifice, charity, and austerity. The aim of all such sacrifices is to please the Yagyapati, the personality of Godhead. Therefore, the Lord is also Prajapati. According to the Katha Upanishad, The one Lord is the leader and maintainer of all innumerable living entities. Eko bahunam yo vidadhati kaman. The Lord therefore is called the supreme Bhuta Bhrit, or maintainer of all living beings. Living beings are proportionately endowed with intelligence in terms of their previous activities. All living beings are not equally endowed with the same quality of intelligence, because behind such development of intelligence is the control of the Lord, as directed in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, text 15. As Paramatma, the super soul, the Lord of living in everyone's heart, the Lord is living in everyone's heart, and from Him only does one's power of remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness follow. Matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha. One person can sharply remember past activities by the grace of the Lord, while others cannot. One person is highly intelligent by the grace of the Lord, and another is a fool by the same control. Therefore, the Lord is Dhiyampati, or the Lord of intelligence. The conditioned souls strive to become lords of the material world. Everyone is trying to lord it over the material world by applying his highest degree of intelligence. This misuse of intelligence by the conditioned soul is called madness. One's full intelligence should be applied to get free from the material clutches, but the conditioned soul, due to madness only, engages his full energy and intelligence in sense gratification, and to achieve this end of life, he willfully commits all sorts of misdeeds. The result is that instead of attaining an unconditional life of full freedom, the mad conditioned soul is engaged again and again in different types of bondage in material bodies. Everything we see in the material manifestation is but a creation of the Lord. Therefore, He is the real proprietor of everything in the universes. The conditioned soul can enjoy a fragment of this material creation under the control of the Lord, but not self-sufficiently. That is the instruction in the Ishopanishad. One should be satisfied with things awarded by the Lord of the universe. It is out of madness only that one tries to encroach upon another's shares of material possessions. The Lord of the universe, out of His causeless mercy upon the conditioned souls, descends by His own energy, Atma Maya, to re-establish the eternal relation of the conditioned souls with Him. He instructs all to surrender unto Him instead of falsely claiming to be enjoyers for a certain limit under His control. When He so descends, He proves how much greater is His ability to enjoy. He exhibits His power of enjoyment, for instance, by marrying 16,000 wives at once. The conditioned soul is very proud of becoming the husband of even one wife, but the Lord laughs at this. The intelligent man can know who is the real husband. Factually, the Lord is the husband of all the women in His creation, but a conditioned soul under the control of the Lord feels proud to be the husband of one or two wives. All these qualifications as the different types of pati mentioned in this verse are meant for Lord Sri Krishna, and Sukadeva Goswami has therefore especially mentioned the pati and gati of the Yadu dynasty. The members of the Yadu dynasty knew that Lord Sri Krishna is everything, and all of them intended to return to Lord Krishna after he had finished his transcendental pastimes on the earth. The Yadu dynasty was annihilated by the will of the Lord because its members had to return home with the Lord. The annihilation of the Yadu dynasty was a material show created by the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, the Lord and the members of the Yadu dynasty are all eternal associates. The Lord is therefore the guide of all devotees, and as such, Sukadeva Goswami offered him due respects with love-laden feelings. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamakyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaf Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shriyaf Patir Yajna Patir Prajapatir Dhyam Patir Lokapatir Dharapatihi Patir Gatis Chandaka Vrishni Satvatam Prasidatam Me Bhagavan Satam Patihi. May Lord Sri Krishna, who is the worshipable Lord of all devotees, the protector and glory of all the kings, like Andaka and Vrishni of the Yadu dynasty, the husband of all goddesses of fortune, the director of all sacrifices, and therefore the leader of all living entities, the controller of all intelligence, the proprietor of all the planets, spiritual and material, and the supreme incarnation on the earth, the supreme in all, be merciful upon me. So, among the prayers offered by Shukadev Goswami in this section of the Bhagavatam, this verse is another favorite and a very beautifully composed verse. So here, as Srila Prabhupada mentions in this purport, two major words are being used, Pati and Gati. So Pati meaning husband, Pati meaning Lord, Pati meaning master, Gati meaning ultimate destination, Gati meaning the savior, and Gati also means path. Yes. So here Shukadev Goswami, he mentions all of these things, and it's not that he's mentioning these things in a random way. That's what Srila Prabhupada is going over this purport. Now, first of all, Shukadev Goswami says that Lord Krishna, the first thing he uses is Shri of Pati, that the Supreme Lord is the husband of the goddess of fortune. So this is how Srila Prabhupada begins his purport. Although in the translation, the first thing that comes is, may Lord Sri Krishna, who is the worshipable Lord of all devotees. So meaning that all devotees, they have to worship Krishna. And from this, we understand that here also, and Srila Prabhupada puts that in the translation, right? He inserts it in the translation. Although the word supreme incarnation, avatar, is not found in the verse itself. So this is another typical example of Srila Prabhupada, inserting a commentary into the translation, as he does in a couple of places in the Bhagavatam. So Srila Prabhupada makes the point here that because Krishna, Lord Sri Krishna, is referred to as Bhagavan, that he said Satam Patihi, he is the Lord of all the devotees. And of course, which Lord, which Satam Patihi, it could refer to any incarnation of Vishnu. No, it refers to Krishna directly. Why? Because it is said Vrishni Satvatam, Andhaka Vrishni Satvatam, that he is the master of the Vrishnis and the Andhakas, the Lord of the Yadu dynasty, Yadhava, which is Krishna. So here Krishna, Shukadev Goswami is establishing Krishna as the source of all incarnations, that he is the source of all incarnations, and therefore he is the ultimate entity that should be worshipped by all devotees. He is the ultimate supreme being, supreme entity, who must be worshipped by all devotees. So Srila Prabhupada continues upon the previous verse where Shukadev Goswami is referred to as, Shukadev Goswami uses this word Gatavyalika, referring to those who are non-envious. Shukadev Goswami himself, being non-envious, is freed from all misconceptions and therefore establishes his realized perception of Lord Sri Krishna being the sum total of all perfection, the personality of Godhead. So here, this is Shukadev Goswami's realization. This is not just a prayer that Shukadev Goswami is offering in line with the Vedas, but this is his own realization. And Srila Prabhupada establishes that. And that's important to understand. And it's also important to understand that you may need to get up. So everyone is seeking the favor of the goddesses of fortune, but people do not know that Lord Sri Krishna is the beloved husband of all goddesses of fortune. So Prabhupada goes on to describe that in the Brahma Samhita, Krishna is served by hundreds of thousands of goddesses of fortune. Which verse is that in the Brahma Samhita? Chintamani prakara sadmasu kalpa vriksha lakshavriteshu surabhir abhipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Sambrama Sevyamanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. It's literally the very first verse. I mean, first verse is Ishvara Paramakrishna, but it's the first verse of the stuti, of the prayers that Brahma offers. So there it is said that he is accustomed. Prabhupada uses this word, which is very nice. Prabhupada uses this word that the Supreme Lord in Goloka Vrindavan is accustomed to herding cows and being served by goddesses of fortune. Means that is what he's used to. Means that the Supreme Lord, He likes that. When you use that word accustomed, I'm accustomed to doing something, that means you like doing it. So the Supreme Lord, what does He like to do? What does He like to do? What does He enjoy? He is accustomed to herding cows. This is what He likes to do. He likes to herd cows. That's His preference. Right? And He's served by all these hundreds of goddesses of fortune. And all these goddesses of fortune are manifestations of His transcendental pleasure potency. And here, Srila Prabhupada takes the purport to explain that these goddesses of fortune are Haladini Shakti. They are expansions of the Lord's pleasure potency. So the Supreme Lord's pleasure, why is the pleasure potency feminine? Because the pleasure potency is meant to give pleasure to Krishna. It's meant to give pleasure to the Purusha. It is meant to give pleasure to the source of that pleasure, of that pleasure potency. The source of that pleasure potency is where that pleasure potency is supposed to go back and serve that personality. So the Supreme Lord is the energetic, and there are different energies. And the Supreme Lord, being the energetic, is the shelter of all the energies. And that which takes shelter is feminine. That which takes shelter is feminine, which is why ultimately we conditioned souls are also, we're energies of Krishna. Ultimately, our position is feminine to the supreme masculine being, which is Krishna. Masculine, not in the sense of what is defined as masculinity in this material world. It is not the masculinity that, foolish people like this top Jeep, shows himself to be. It's not that kind of gross masculinity. It is masculinity of the Supreme Lord Krishna being the actual enjoyer. These role models, these what do you call them? What do they call these kind of people? The influencers. So these influencers, they describe themselves, they show themselves as the enjoyer, they explain everybody what's the importance of getting wealth, making it up there, and for that you always need to go to the gym, which I never understood that, because there's so many people in the world who don't go to the gym and are rich. But somehow that going to the gym is associated with becoming rich. Of course, it's more associated with attracting the opposite sex than it is about making yourself wealthy, because you're actually spending money going to the gym. So, you don't have to do that. You can exercise without going to a gym. So this kind of absurd masculinity is what is promoted, and that masculinity, or that, and what is defined, what goes on in the name of mundane, feminism is also not what is referred to the feminine nature of the energies of the Supreme Lord. So this idea of male and female within this conditioned world has absolutely, it is in no way similar to the actual Supreme Lord Krishna, who is the real male, and his goddesses of fortune, who are the real females in this creation. Now, some of their characteristics are distorted and can be seen in what is mundane, in the mundane male and mundane female, but that is not what Shukadeva Goswami is interested in. This is the point, that Shukadeva Goswami is describing this, and here Srila Prabhupada specifically, he takes the meaning of Shriya Patihi as not as just Lakshmi, right? Lakshmi is what you generally think. Shriyaha, Shri refers to Lakshmi. But here, the real goddesses of fortune, Srila Prabhupada takes them to be of two forms, because of their relation to Krishna. What are they? You have the gopis of Vrindavan, and you have the wives of Dwarka. The wives of Dwarka. These are the two Shriya Patihi. When referred to Krishna, these are the two main things that at least here in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is referring to those two goddesses, two types of goddesses of fortune. And first he begins by describing Shri of Patihi, referring to the Rasa Leela, which is very interesting because the Rasa Leela, they are not actually the wives of Krishna. Generally, you would think Patihi meaning wife, meaning husband. So that the goddesses of fortune are meant to be the wives of Krishna. But in this case, Krishna is not, Prabhupada is giving a purport here where he is elaborating on Shri of Patihi as also referring to the gopis of Vrindavan who are not married to Krishna. They are in paramount love with the Supreme Lord. And why still the Supreme Lord is Patihi? They consider the Supreme Lord as the object of their attraction. They are not attracted to their real husbands. The pastime is such that they are married and they do perform dutifully their obligations to their family, to their husbands, to their children. But ultimately, when Krishna gives the call, when Krishna blows the flute, they drop everything and go to Krishna in the Rasa Leela. And this is something that in the mundane world is considered to be very abominable. And therefore, why would a renounced person like Shukadeva Goswami speak about that? Because it has no relation with the mundane sex affairs of this world. And Srila Prabhupada is in this purport, Srila Prabhupada makes the point that nor does the manifestation of the Lord's pleasure potency have any connection with such degraded things, referring to the mundaners who want to enjoy this mundane sex taste, who are after sex life in the mundane world. Prabhupada says sex life in the mundane world is the root cause of being conditioned by the shackles of illusion. And the manifestation of the Lord's pleasure potency does not have any connection with such degraded things. Meaning that it is not possible that if one is actually attracted, if one is actually relishing the affairs between the gopis and Krishna, they cannot be cultivating lusty desires. Meaning the result of that cannot be growing lusty desires. It cannot be acting in any way that will condition one to the material world. Because these are topics that liberate one. They don't condition. So if the conditioning is happening, then that means we are not listening. We are not listening to, we have no access, that in spite of that, and this we see, that those who are unqualified, when they jump to the 10th canto, and they start reading the Rasa Leela, or they start reading these esoteric books, what happens? But at the same time, you don't see them giving up their material desires. Rather, you see them still having all these material desires, having all this attachment to this material world, but that cannot be. That contradiction cannot exist. It cannot exist at all. Therefore, in Shukadeva Goswami, you don't see that. You see that he's completely renounced. But yet, he's speaking of the Rasa Leela. And Prabhupada gives Lord Chaitanya as an example, because Lord Chaitanya is Krishna who has come in the mood of Srimati Radharani. It is very interesting to note that, see, the purpose of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, one of the purposes, the internal purpose of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, was to relish the affairs of Srimati Radharani with Lord Krishna, the affairs of the gopis with Krishna, to glorify that, Krishna himself wanted to taste that devotion, that love that Srimati Radharani had for Krishna. And all the associates come along with Krishna, Swaparshada Suyadama Sahavatari, that they all descend to this material world, all the associates of Krishna descend along with him. And it's very interesting that they all, for most part, there are some, but for most of them, they all assume male forms. Lord Chaitanya's pastimes is largely consisting of male forms. If you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, what characters are you dealing with? You have more female characters in the Bhagavatam than you have in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The Chaitanya Charitamrita is practically all male characters. No, it's not that Lord Chaitanya and and his associates or Krishna himself prefers the male form. Like it's like they're trying to show whatever, some bias, some mundane bias towards the male form. But it is to emphasize also that even though they're males, they're completely renounced, they do not exhibit any of this mundane sex desire, and yet they are meditating upon the highest form of transcendental sex that is enjoyed by Krishna and his associates. And Lord Chaitanya was so strict that he would not allow any woman to come near him, not even to bow down and offer respects. See, one would think, and this is, you see, if you go to Orissa and Bengal, you'll realize why this is such a big thing. Because it's very difficult to prevent women from coming closer and grabbing the feet of a sannyasi. It's such a common thing, and they get very offended. It's a big thing, And Lord Chaitanya would not, and if that is what it is now, I mean, even now, if you go, this is what it is. This is how it is. During Lord Chaitanya's time, it's very difficult to imagine. Lord Chaitanya would not allow, and to state that, meaning that Lord Chaitanya, it seems, right? We don't have proof, but to specifically mention that means that it seems that Lord Chaitanya kept himself at a higher standard than what was perhaps even the norm for sannyasis in those days. That he wouldn't even let a woman come close. Not that sannyasis of the day would dilly-dally with women, but Lord Chaitanya did seem to be very strict, because he was trying to make a point. And it said here, Lord Chaitanya was a strict sannyasi, so much that he never heard the prayers of the Devadasis offered in the temple of Jagannath, because a sannyasi is forbidden to hear songs sung by the fair sex. These Devadasis are female dancers who sing and dance in front of Lord Jagannath even today. This custom is there. Right? They perform in front of Lord Jagannath in the temple of Lord Jagannath. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would not go. They are singing pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. He would not go. He wouldn't see it. He wouldn't hear it. His own associate, Ramananda Rai, who is one of the principal associates of the Supreme Lord, is training these Devadasis in a drama performance for the pleasure of Jagannath. What is that called? Is there a name given to that? It's mentioned in the okay. And Ramananda Rai is Ramananda Rai. He had absolutely no sex desire, and he was associating with he was associating with these Devadasis, but Lord Chaitanya would have nothing to do with it. Now, of course, Ramananda Rai is a transcendental personality, no comparison. But we are speaking of one of Lord Chaitanya's principal associates training the Devadasis to offer prayers and dance to Lord Jagannath, and Lord Chaitanya himself would not listen to that. That's something. That's something to note. This is how strict it is, because it's not done. It's not done. So, sannyasis, brahmacharis and sannyasis should make a note of this, that it is said that a sannyasi is forbidden to hear songs sung by the fair sex. And it doesn't matter if it is a Hare Krishna mantra, it's not supposed to be heard. It's stated here in the purport. Okay, yet even a rigid position of a sannyasi, he recommended the mode of worship preferred by the gopis of Vrindavan as the topmost loving service possible to be rendered by the Lord. And Srimati Radharani is the principal head of all such goddesses of fortune. Therefore, she is the pleasure counterpart of the Lord and is non-different from Krishna. So, Prabhupada, he first refers to Radharani as actually Shri of Pati. Shri of Pati refers to whom? Not Lakshmi, Radharani. So, Shri of Pati refers to Krishna. Shriya over there actually refers to Radharani. That Radharani is actually the source of all Lakshmi. She is the source of all the goddesses of fortune. She is the principal pleasure potency of the Supreme Lord. That her pleasure, she expands into multiple forms, but she is the principal head. She is the fountain head of all the goddesses of fortune. So then Krishna Prabhupada goes on to describe that so the next word that's being used is Yagyapatihi. So Prabhupada establishes the point that why do people perform sacrifices? Ultimately, they primarily perform sacrifices to gain the favor of the goddess of fortune. They gain the favor of Lakshmi. That's why they're performing all these sacrifices. But where is that? Oh, so yeah, okay. So so they are all they are all trying to gain the favor of the goddess of fortune, but they do not know that Vishnu is ultimately the master of the goddess of fortune. That if they gain the favor of Krishna, why does one have to gain the favor of goddess of fortune? Now, although we may think, well, people perform sacrifices to go to the heavenly planets, how is that gaining the favor of the goddess of fortune? Because the heavenly planets are those that are places that are favored by the goddess of fortune. Anything that has wealth, why would you perform sacrifice to go to a place? There's still more kirtan coming out of the kitchen. Can someone figure out what's going on? Oh, it's coming from the bathroom. I see. Okay. All right. So the devotees who are worshipping all these different demigods, they're all worshipping them because they're all favored by the goddess of fortune. Why do people want to come? Why do people want to migrate to the United States of America? Because there's wealth here. Otherwise, why will you come? You won't come. Now, how many people are clamoring to go to some other country, that's poor? How many people are clamoring to go to whatever? So many places. Yeah, so there are war-torn countries in the Middle East, war-torn countries. Nobody's going, everybody's escaping. Because that which is not favored by the goddess of fortune, nobody wants to go. Yogi doesn't want to go, nobody wants to go there. Right? So therefore, ultimately, the purpose of performing all these sacrifices is to seek the favor of the goddess of fortune. And here it is mentioned that and those who are not freed from all misconceptions, Vyalikam, they perform sacrifices to please the minor demigods. But the devotees of the Lord know very well that Lord Krishna is the supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices. And so then Prabhupada quotes this verse from the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. What is that? Yeah. So, Prajashishtva. Puro vacha prajapatihi. Anena prasavidhya swam eshavoshtaka madhuk. What's the first line? Sahayagya prajashishtva. Sahayagya prajashishtva. Puro vacha prajapatihi. Anena prasavishyadhvam. Eshavoshtaka madhuk. So there, Yeshavoshtaka madhuk. Okay. Yeah, Eshavosht Vishtakamaduk. Eshavosht Vishtakamaduk. Okay, so there it is said that Prajapati, Brahma, after creating all the universe, after creating all the living beings in this universe, he says, go, be thou happy by the sacrifice. Because by performance of the sacrifice, all your desires will be fulfilled. All your needs will be fulfilled. Prabhupada makes here, with such sacrificial performances, the conditioned soul will never be in difficulty in keeping the body and soul together. This is very important. We have to understand that without performance of sacrifice, we will not be able to keep our body and soul together. Meaning what? Meaning that we will always be struggling for needs. There will always be some struggle for some needs. And people today are struggling. There's so much struggle for all these needs. Why? Because there's no performance of sacrifice. So Prabhupada mentions over here that under no circumstance should a conditioned soul ever give up the practice of sacrifice, charity, and austerity. A person who doesn't perform these 3 activities is bound to be miserable, even if he's a devotee. Even if he's a devotee. You see, sacrifice specifically refers in Kali Yuga for us, as Prabhupada will state here later, refers to the performance of Sankirtan Yajna. That it is by the performance of Sankirtan that here it is says Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnoho. That by the performance of Sankirtan Yajna we can become happy. That Sankirtan Yajna doesn't just refer to japa. If you do your japa and you were to read books, that's good. But you have to perform Sankirtan. You have to support Sankirtan. You have to support the glorification and spreading of the Sankirtan mission. We have to if we're not if we either have to engage in that directly as much as possible, as far as possible, performing Harinam, book distribution and Prasadam distribution, specifically Harinam and book distribution, and the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. We must even if devotees are living outside, they must understand the importance of chanting, singing and dancing along with devotees. This is very important. Oh Prabhu, why do I need to come to the temple? I can just read, I can just chant, and I can hear lectures online. But where are you doing Sankirtan? Where are you doing Sankirtan? You should perform in Sankirtan. Okay, it's great to support Sankirtan by giving donations, but we also must personally perform as far as possible. Actually, we're supposed to perform every day, right? We have to come to that platform. This is why Srila Prabhupada wanted to establish farm communities, because then the Grihasthas can perform Sankirtan every day. If you don't perform Sankirtan, if you don't perform sacrifice, you see, previously, before Sankirtan Yajna was introduced by Lord Chaitanya, people had to perform the different kinds of yajnas. This is the Pancha Maha Yajna that a Grihastha has to perform every single day. You have to perform yajnas. And the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas, of course, the Brahmanas would perform yajnas on behalf of all the other Varnas, and there's so many things going on. So this yajna has to be performed. Sacrifice has to be performed. Charity has to be performed. It is a must. It is a must. If one does not perform charity, one will not be happy. Finished. One will not have one's needs. You keep all the money you want, but you'll still be suffering. You have to perform charity. Best charity is to give charity to Vaishnavas. They are better than Brahmanas. They are better than, So charity to the Hari Guru and Vaishnavas. This must be performed. So that charity must be performed. And austerity must be performed. Austerity must be undertaken. That devotees should fast. Devotees should and personally one should accept some austerity in one's life. One should visit the holy places. When one is visiting the holy places, one should undertake some austerity. Similarly, in general, one should try to minimize one's necessities as far as possible, or at least progress towards minimizing one's necessities in life. Of course, performance of austerity also involves in following the four regulative principles, which is very important. So in that way, austerity is performed. If one does not follow the four regulative principles, there is no question of being happy. So this is another important point to understand. Sacrifice, this is that this sacrifice, charity and austerity, everybody must perform this. How do brahmacharis do that? Sacrifice, you perform. Sankirtan Yajna. Therefore, we attend all the kirtans, attend all the aartis, attend all this, enthusiastically participate in kirtan, engage in book distribution. Okay, and then how do we perform charity? Charity of one's very life. One's very life is donated to one's spiritual master. This is charity. This is the charity that a brahmachari engages in. What is the austerity? Austerity in fulfilling the order of the spiritual master. It's not an easy order. Lot of austerity must be undertaken, and to gain empowerment for fulfilling the order of the spiritual master, one may accept some austerity also, in order to pray to the Supreme Lord, to give one the intelligence. Offering prayers, offering obeisances to the Supreme Lord, being humble. The austerity, of course. The austerities have all been listed by Rupa Goswami in Nectar of Instruction, text 1. Vacho vegam, manasa krodha vegam, jihva vegam, udara upasta vegam. This is austerity. To control all of this is austerity. Without controlling all of this, nobody can become successful. Nobody can be happy. So this is another very important point to understand. So, Therefore, the Supreme Lord is called Bhutabrit. He is called the maintainer of all living entities, because by performing these three things, he becomes pleased. All our needs are taken care. We purify ourselves and we go back to Godhead. It's a very, very simple and very nice process. So the living entities are proportionately endowed with intelligence in terms of their previous activities. All living beings are not equally endowed with the same quality of intelligence, because behind the development of intelligence is the control of the Lord. That control of the development of intelligence comes by the supervision of the Paramatma situated within the heart, who sanctions based upon one's activities, one's karma, and one's desires. The Supreme Lord bestows upon a living entity a particular level of intelligence, and according to that level of intelligence, one is able to remember something or forget something, and that all comes from the Supreme Lord. Therefore, he is called Dhyampati. One person is highly intelligent by the grace of the Lord, another is fool. Therefore, the Lord is Dhyampati, the Lord of the intelligence, meaning it is all our intelligence is under his control. And it's important that we understand this, because it is the intelligence that will save us from our mind. It is this intelligence that can save us. It is this intelligence that is meant to control the mind. And without the mercy of the Supreme Lord, we lose our intelligence. We need to pray to the Supreme Lord to give us that intelligence. And therefore, devotees are intelligent, because they realize that the Supreme Lord is the source of their intelligence, and they pray. Therefore, even women in Krishna consciousness are not ordinary women. They are very intelligent, because they have recognized the Supreme Lord as the source of intelligence. And therefore, the conditioned souls who try to become lords of the material world, they are unintelligent, because they don't recognize the Supreme Lord as the source of intelligence. They think their intelligence is their own, and they use their intelligence to instead of using their God-given intelligence to free themselves from the clutches of this material world, like how pure devotees do, or Krishna conscious devotees do, the conditioned souls engage their intelligence in becoming more conditioned in this material world by thinking themselves to be the lords of this material world. And therefore, Prabhupada says, the result is that instead of attaining an unconditional life of full freedom, the mad conditioned soul is entangled again and again in different types of bondage in material bodies. So, therefore, Prabhupada writes here that it is out of madness only that one tries to encroach upon another's shares of material possessions. And this, as devotees also, we have to understand, right? We have our particular abilities. We have our particular service. We need to know how to stay in our lane. We need to know how to stay in our lane. We need to recognize this. We need to recognize the fact that some devotees have been given intelligence to perform certain activities, and they are engaging their wonderful intelligence in glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead and pleasing the spiritual master in extraordinary ways. We have also been given some intelligence. We may also engage that in Krishna's service, but we should not try to encroach upon somebody else's. We have to learn to be genuine, sincere devotees. We should not try to covet the possessions of somebody else. You may think, but this is not a possession. But the intelligence and ability of another person is his possession. It is that possession that the Supreme Lord has allowed them to have. And therefore, when we come out of this concept of life where we are the enjoyer, we will not covet. We will be satisfied. This is the first instruction of Ishopanishad. Now, what does it say? Isha Vashyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjita magradha kasya svidhanam. Do not covet. Be satisfied with what the Supreme Lord has been given. Let us be satisfied with the service that our spiritual master has given us. There is nothing insignificant in the order of the spiritual master. There is absolutely nothing insignificant in the order of the spiritual master. It is the most glorious order. I personally had this disease, wanting to impress. I still have it. You're trying every time. I have, but my Guru Maharaj instructed me, don't try to impress. Don't try to impress. So I keep trying to remember that, because there's just so many faults. I mean, if we start analyzing our faults, it's very depressing. We have so many faults, but we need to learn to become satisfied. We need to learn to, and in that, see, when we learn to become satisfied, then we don't covet the other person's position. We don't covet the other person's service. We don't covet the other person's wealth. We don't covet their wife. We at that point of time, in that state of mind, it is possible to view every woman as actually a representation of the goddess of fortune, who actually, and they are all belonging to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are not meant for my pleasure. They are all meant for Krishna's pleasure. They are all actually, all these women are meant to be enjoyed by Krishna, not by me. Just like the goddesses of fortune are being enjoyed by Krishna, these women also have to be enjoyed. As we understand that the pure goddesses of fortune are different to the conditioned soul in the material world, but still, none of them are meant for our pleasure. Then we will not desire. How can we develop that unless we become genuine, sincere devotees who are actually humble? If you see, it's not that the Vanaras who were serving along with Hanuman, they didn't become envious of Hanuman. They didn't become envious of Hanuman's extraordinary capabilities. They did not even become envious of Hanuman's recognition that Hanuman received from Lord Ramachandra. And you will see even in our philosophy, right? Even if you were to become imbued with Madhurya Rasa, ultimately, we are under the gopis, under, Rupa Manjari, if we desire to become one of the gopis, well, I also want to be Radharani. I want to be one of the principal Ashtasakis. This is not our mood. And if we think, well, when I become purified, I want. But now, if we're thinking, oh, well, that devotee is doing that devotee is doing this devotee is doing that, well, I also want that recognition, I also want position, I also want to be, seen as something. No, this mundane concept of devotional service, this cannot take us back to Godhead. This is all part of the same thing, that instead of understanding that we are actually meant to give pleasure to Krishna, we want to become lords. You see, I won't become lord of the material world, but in a particular devotional service to the Lord, I want to be a lord. I want to be a lord of that particular aspect. I want to have that particular recognition. I want to have that particular crown on my head. It's not such a big crown. You see, it's related to devotional service, but it's still mundane because you're looking at it in a mundane way. Srila Prabhupada did not perform his devotional service thinking that, yes, now I am going to claim the title of Shaktiavesh Avatar, the prediction that Lord Chaitanya gave. I want all the people to understand that I am the one who have come to fulfill that order. No. Srila Prabhupada didn't execute his devotional service. He didn't execute the order of his spiritual master thinking like that. In fact, he never thought that Srila Prabhupada thought that all the preaching was done by his spiritual master. He didn't think that he actually did it. He achieved anything. He said, actually, and that's the song we sung yesterday, Krishna Taba Punya Habe Bai. He said, by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's desire, his strong desire it is spreading. He wanted to do it. Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he is so powerful, he could have turned the whole world into Krishna consciousness, but he left some service for us. This is the mood. This is the mood of the Acharyas. Even though a guru may be humble enough to say that, oh, you are all doing so much more than what I am doing. I'm not capable of doing. You are doing everything. If the Guru tells the disciple should not think, yes, my Guru Maharaj is not doing anything, I'm doing everything. If he thinks like that, he'll go to hell, that's all. That there is begin his fall down. No. So, therefore, here and Prabhupada concludes, here by making this point in the penultimate paragraph, he says that when the Supreme Lord descends, he proves how much greater is his ability to enjoy. He exhibits his power of enjoyment, for instance, by marrying 16,000 wives at once. The conditioned soul is very proud of becoming the husband of even one wife. But the Lord laughs at this. The intelligent man can know who is the real husband. So this is why Dhyampati, because he understands, what Lord, what is this? Even if the devotee has a wife, he doesn't think that this wife is meant for my enjoyment, or the wife is some sex toy. Not like that. Dhyampati, he is worshipper of Dhyampati. He understands that the Supreme Lord, he is intelligent by Krishna's mercy. By the mercy of the master of all intelligence, he is intelligent enough to understand that the Supreme Lord is the enjoyer, everyone, including his wife. Right? And therefore, the Prabhupada says, factually, the Lord is the husband of all women in his creation, but a conditioned soul under the control of the Lord feels proud to be the husband of one or two wives. And mind you, I've heard from Grahasthas that it's quite a feat that, when you've come out of marriage, you had a successful marriage life, you've had one wife or two wives, whatever, and you've had children, and you've maintained the whole family and this and that, and it's something that people are very proud of. I believe, I don't know where this was recounted, but Srila Prabhupada visited a donor's house, and the donor, is like a grandfather-like figure, older figure, and he displays his family picture, and there's so many family members, him and his wife are there, and then there's like he has had several children, those children have had grandchildren, and they have their wives, and it's like this big joint family picture. Oh, he brought all of them to meet. Oh, okay. So he brought all of them to meet Prabhupada. And Prabhupada remarked, just see his sex life. He got all of them to show me his sex life. Yeah, he got all of them to show me his sex life. But people are very proud. They're very proud. See, my family has grown so big, and I'm the respected, grandsire of all of them, and they are all so many children and so many things and this and that. And they're quite proud of it. But what are they in compared to Krishna? Krishna has had 16,100 wives, so many grandchildren, so many children, so many grandchildren. It's so difficult. When you read Krishna book, you get a little confused. Who's his son of whom, who, and it's like, it becomes quite confusing. But they're all the Yadavas, they are all the descendants of Lord Krishna are also in the same Andhaka Vrishni dynasty of the Yadavas. And for all of them, therefore, Prabhupada, see how beautifully what he does is he strings all of these, finally. And then he says that ultimately, that patir gatis chandaka vrishti satvatam, that how he takes it from Shriyavpati to, he takes it from, what is this, Shriyavpati, then he takes it to Yajnapatif, then he takes it to Prajapati, meaning that they are ultimately, the Supreme Lord is master of all living beings because he provides for all of them. Shriyavpati, everybody wants the goddess of fortune. Yajnapati, they approach the goddess of fortune, therefore they perform sacrifices, they want to perform sacrifices. Okay, but because the Supreme Lord is the Lord of all sacrifices, he provides for all the living beings, therefore he is Prajapati. He provides for all the living entities, but living entities don't realize that the Supreme, they think that they have to be provided for everything because they think they are the enjoyers. But one who is intelligent actually understands that Krishna is the enjoyer. Therefore, Krishna is the actual source of all intelligence. From him only all the intelligence, the capability of lording over this material universe comes from him. Therefore, he is Diyampatihi. And because he is Diyampatihi, because he is the controller of all intelligence, actually he is the controller of the whole world, Lokapati. He is the controller of the entire world, of the entire earth, Dharapatihi. He is the controller of the entire earth. And because the Vrishnis and Andakas, they don't have this misconception that they are the controllers, they are the enjoyers. Therefore, he is Andaka Vrishni Satvatam. Andaka, so yes, he says is so Andaka Vrishni Satvatam, and that he is the Patir Gati. He is the Patir and the Gati. See, for everybody else, he is only Pati, but for the Andaka and Vrishni dynasties, for the devotees of Krishna in the Yadava and the Vrishni dynasty, and in the Andaka and Vrishni dynasties, the Yadavas, for them he is Gati, he is the ultimate destination. And for whom also is he Gatihi? After that, he says, Prasidatam me Bhagavan Satvatam Patihi. For him also, he is Gatihi. For all the devotees, he is Gatihi. He is Patihi and Gatihi for all the devotees. So here, Shukadeva Goswami, he distinguishes. He says for the others, he's just the Lord. But for us, not only he is the Lord, he is everything. He is our very destination. He is our only object of worship. For whom? For the Yadavas. And then out of affection, Shukadeva Goswami says, but me also, Krishna, me also, love-laden feeling, me also, you are also, just like the Andakas and Vrishnis, for me also. Oh, hey Yadava, hey Vasudeva, you are also my Pati and my Gati. But he doesn't want to, but he's humble. Shukadeva Goswami, he's already liberated. But he says, but not only just for me, but for all devotees. For all devotees. Not just for me, for all devotees. You are the Gati and the Pati. So it's such a beautiful verse, such an amazing verse. How this poetry, how he strings it. And it's not just poetry, it's filled with his sharp intelligence. What amazing intelligence Shukadeva Goswami has got, this transcendental intelligence, how he just strings. But even then, we would have read this and we thought it's very poetic, it's very nice, it's very beautiful, it sounds very beautiful. But Srila Prabhupada, he just brings it out. How much intelligence Srila Prabhupada would be, how intelligent is Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is just like Shukadeva Goswami, brings this all out. So yeah, Hare Krishna. So any questions or comments? Yes. Ranchor Prabhu, anything?
Oh, there's one thing I remembered.
Yes, please.
With Lord Chaitanya, he allowed that Mataji to stand on his shoulders. Huh?
Right. He did. That's a good point. He did. He did.
Hare Krishna. Just two short things. Okay. The one thing, I guess this, I have a question also, but one thing is, it was mentioning in here at the end of the purport about the Yadu dynasty, and, it's not, this isn't the question, it's a comment. But Prabhupada mentions the Yadu dynasty in the sense that, their pastime, they wind it up and everything like that.
Right.
I was thinking about that the other day, that in, literary or whatever, like you have these great classical works and they classify them as like a tragedy or whatever. But in Krishna's pastimes, there's no, the element of tragedy is there, but it's not like a tragic ending in the sense that, Krishna's pastimes
sweet ending always, yeah.
It's, I was kind of thinking about that.
Yeah, that's the Madhurashtakam.
Yeah.
Haranam Madhuram. Even his killing is sweet.
Yeah.
How do you understand killing is sweet? Krishna's killing is sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jai.
And then I had a question here. So you were talking, I understand the point. Prabhupada's talking, like brahmacharis, especially sannyasis, shouldn't hear a woman sing. But then someone might argue, well, like householders can hear women singing. I don't know if you can like comment on that or explain that.
Well, at least in the purport in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, This is actually in the very chapter that I forget what it's in Madhya Lila, chapter 13. In the introduction, Srila Prabhupada writes that a sannyasi or a Vaishnava should not hear women sing. Prabhupada writes that there. It's right there in his book. And so, there are certain instances in history where things have been done, but this is the principle. There can be exceptions to it, but because Srila Prabhupada wrote it in his books, and his books are the law books, that we have to take any other instances or other things that Srila Prabhupada has stated to be exceptions to the rule, because the rules are stated in his books. He may state rules elsewhere too, but his books are considered to be, by Srila Prabhupada himself, to be the best way to know him. And so, it's stated in the book there, yeah.
Well, I had a question in this purport here. Prabhupada is mentioning how the Yadus, they all went back home, back to Godhead, and it was just a material fight, Then in the Bhagavatam, in another place in Bhagavatam, I think, even in the Christian book, it says that only some of the Yadus, who more or less basically they actually went back to the spiritual world, whereas Krishna moved another set of Yadus to the Prahasta, what is it called? Prabhasha Kshetra. So in order to cleanse themselves of some kind of sin or whatever.
Offense.
Of the sin.
Hare Krishna.
What happened?
I don't know.
Oh, he knocked out?
There's only one thing that happens.
Oh, I see. He's okay. So the some of the Yadus went to the Prabhasa Kshetra, and they actually Prabhupada said for the demigods who had to go back to the. So could you harmonize this, Prabhu? That's the first thing that came to my mind when I read that.
I don't know how to harmonize it. I'll be frank. I didn't think about that. Prabhupada says this and says that. I could philosophically speculate, but I'd prefer not to.
Yeah.
Because there might be an explanation by the acharyas in some place, but I'm not specifically aware of that.
Okay.
So, yes.
Just a quick comment on how this verse actually is fitting, being that it nicely complements the recent lectures by Guru Maharaj, Abhipriya, Arha, Priyarha, how Krishna is fit to be worshipped, therefore he's worshipped, and that he's dear, therefore he's worshipped, and ultimate, and even the third lecture regarding Krishna, the supreme goal, and he actually addresses the word gati, which is an abode, or also the goal. So anyway, just this verse is actually just complements the recent lectures very nicely. Just adding on to the list of how Krishna is fit to be worshipped and why.
Yeah.
Is mentioned in this purport. It's
Yeah.
of Lord Vishnu.
Yeah. Anybody has anything else? Yes, Trace.
Hare Krishna. You were mentioning about this coveting other service and this trying to be the master of your service. So how do you balance that with wanting to perform your service really well and maybe having strong opinions about things and not getting to that over the line there?
If you perform a service and you like performing the service, you will have opinions. That is natural. It is a part of showing some dedication, some love, some interest in a particular service, is to now the difference is when you perform a service, you take responsibility for that service. Even if it's as simple as cleaning the temple room, you take responsibility for it. Then you can have some opinion about it. You can have opinion, you can clean this, clean that. But there are some people who just who just comment upon different services. You could do it like this, you could do it like that. Prabhuji, maybe this is a good idea. Open this, open Goshala, start this, start that. You won't do anything yourself. You'll come and give wonderful ideas. Hey, it's just keep giving ideas. Oh, Prabhu, you can generate money this way. You can do this that way. Why don't you train the devotees like this? But what have you done? Like it's so when one when one has opinions without the backing of responsibility or experience, right? Where you've shown some experience of, that's such opinions are, they're not as valuable, let me say like that. So yes, one can have opinions, but one should take responsibility. Then that's how the balance is achieved. Because when you take responsibility, then you also take all the things about the service that you don't like, that we generally don't like. So many things go wrong with the service, so many problems, so many obstacles come in the service, right? So that also has to be taken, and that's how that gets balanced out, is when the responsibility is taken. But without responsibility, therefore actually devotees have to cultivate that if they actually want to become serious in Krishna consciousness, is to have some sense of belonging to the service given by spiritual master, service given by seniors. This is something we should feel belonging to. We should look forward to doing that. We should miss it when we're not able to do it. These are good feelings, because we're personal, right? Vaishnavism is a personal, we're personalistic. So this is important. But at the same time, we have to recognize that others also feel that way, and that if we're not willing to take responsibility for a particular service, then better not to put our noses into it. And if you're intelligent enough, you'll understand that there's only so much responsibility one can take. Right? You won't covet too much, because you know what problems you're going to get with it also. Yeah, that's why even so-called manager, right? Is supposed to take responsibility of everything. But even there, a good manager is one who manages himself out of a situation. Meaning he delegates the responsibility. Otherwise he can't. It's impossible. Only Krishna can take responsibility for everything. It'll drive us crazy. Okay, Isaac.
I would like to know how will we can define mind, intelligence, and consciousness.
Mind,
intelligence, and consciousness.
Mind is an element, subtle element. Intelligence is another subtle element. Consciousness is the characteristic of the soul. Consciousness is proof that the soul exists. Just like heat is proof of fire. Similarly, consciousness is proof that soul exists. No soul here because there is no consciousness. Intelligence, anyway, Krishna defines all these things in Bhagavad Gita. Mind, thinking, feeling, willing is all through the mind. Okay? Intelligence is where one determines what is to be done and what is not to be done. This is literally the main function of intelligence. What is to be done and what is not to be done. This is intelligence. This is what we learn from Shastra. We learn by hearing spiritual master everything. So this is intelligence. Mind is thinking, feeling, willing, is the storehouse of all the emotions. All this is stored in the mind. And the mind relates with the senses. That's a short answer. There's so much that can be spoken about this, but that's a short answer.
One more thing about.
I think we have to stop. Everybody gets one question, one chance.
Oh, okay.
Okay? All right. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha.